So I would think, okay, predictable revenue, like you want people using it as long as they give you credit for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I don't
But
know. Then you
who
got to
knows?
go and have all these conversations with all these people that are referencing you, and then you risk just them taking it down and changing the words, and you're like, but it's when people use it as like part of their brand. They're like, oh, we are like, I don't know, we help create predictable revenue. That's when you're like, do I reach out to this huge SaaS company and be like, hey, y'all can't say that? I don't know.
Potentially. I don't know. Exactly.
I've seen a couple and I haven't done anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm Canadian. I'm not very litigious or smart,
Midwestern,
apparently.
so I get it.
Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Feeling ready to kick your sales into high gear? We're here to help. Check out our sales coaching and consulting services at predictablerevenue.com.
Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. I'm your host, Colin Stewart. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Jeremy Weisz. He helps companies or people find their dream 200 clients. He's with Rise 25. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
I'm honored. Thanks for having me. I love your show. I love your content. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. And if anybody's listening, you can thank Jeremy, because when I was first getting started in podcasting, you took so much of your time out of your day. This was like 6-7 years ago. You helped me tremendously. So from the format of the show to the coming up with the process and figuring all the stuff out, like probably wouldn't be doing this or wouldn't be doing it nearly as well without you. So thank you.
Thank you. You're so welcome.
I hesitated before having you on the show this afternoon. And I never do this, but I've been doing what you're doing. I just started doing it this week, or last week actually, but all the interviews started hitting this week and they were working so well. I'm like, I don't want to have Jeremy on, because if everybody else starts doing this, then it's going to not work. It's not going to work as well for me. And like, I'm not making this up. This is an actual thought. I was getting my lunch and I was like, could I in good conscience cancel this or do something else? And I was like, no, I can't. I've already committed. You do an awesome job. I got the idea from you. And another podcast guest I had on, and I can't remember. He's from, I think, Halifax, and he had a consultancy, and he was doing this a while ago, and he told me I should do it, and I never took him up on the idea. And then after you and I reconnected, I was like, you know what? I should give this a try. And it's working so well. Jeremy, I'm doing it. Why does this work?
So when you say this,
yeah, let's take a step back.
Tell me what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're talking about how to find your best customers, your dream 200 clients using podcasts, using podcasting.
Yeah.
So I took your ideas and I just started. I went, you know what? I'm going to interview them. I know the things. I know how to do outbound. I know how to do a podcast. I'm just going to go do it myself.
Yeah.
Tell me, I've already probably spoiled a little bit of this, but how did you get into doing podcasting in the first place? How did the idea from this come about? Because I don't think this is what you were doing initially when we first met.
No. Yeah, I'll talk about that. I do want to address what you just said there, which it takes work. It takes time and energy and work to do what you're doing and to have the podcast. There's a lot of free information out there. Whether people are going to execute on it is another story, right? And the way I think about it too, and this is going to sound strange, you could have, like you mentioned, clients on, potential clients on, or past clients. You could have partners on. But here's what I want to comment on that, which is I don't have someone on my show to get a client. I actually don't have someone on my show to get a referral partner, all right? Now, of course, they're in the realm of, okay, this is a potential partner. This is maybe a potential client. But actually, the reason I have someone on my show, or my goal when I have someone on the show, is to get them a client or get them a partner. Okay? So like, obviously, when you came on mine, I'm like, how do I help Colin and what he's doing? And I wanted to reconnect you with some people. Yeah. And so that's my goal, really, is to help. And so it comes from a place of serving. And I find like that's how I build relationships, is like looking at serving the other person. Okay. So I just want to comment on that for a second. And so how to get into it, my background, we were talking a little before, is actually in biochemistry and as a chiropractor. And in chiropractic school, they don't teach you how to run a business. So I actually started going to marketing and business conferences. This is back in like 2003, 2004. I stumbled across this thing. I don't even know if it was called podcasting at the time. I think it was 2005, 6. And I started, I'm like, this really hit home for me because I love building relationships. I love learning from successful entrepreneurs and founders, and I love professional development. Like anything I want to learn, I could have someone on and ask them all the questions I'm curious about. So there's a professional development standpoint to it. So I started podcasting back at that time, and it was nothing about health. It was really just interviewing founders and entrepreneurs and running businesses. And by accident, that grew into a separate business because people started contacting me, asking me to help them with these things. And so eventually I exited the chiropractic business and focused 100% on Rise 25 and helping people with their podcasts. So it just grew over time.
Amazing. And I think that must have been the genesis of what was initially, I think, is the podcast is still Inspired Insider, or have you rebranded?
Yep. No. Yeah. Under Rise 25, we have so I do say this kind of like almost everything good in my life tracks back to a podcast. Okay. I did not meet my wife on a podcast. Okay. But Jordan Harbinger, I don't know if Jordan of Jordan Harbinger show, who's I think he gets tens of millions of downloads a month. He actually did meet his wife through his podcast. I think the brother was a listener and eventually introduced him to his wife. That wasn't me, but I did meet John Corcoran, my business partner, through podcasting. We met through podcasting. So a lot of my great friends, people I've gone on family vacations with, I've gone to people's weddings where people I've met through, I've had them on the podcast or through the podcasting universe. So John and I met through podcasting. He had Smart Business Revolution podcast. Everything's under the Rise 25 umbrella. We have 4 internal podcasts from Rise 25, and Inspired Insider just kept us Inspired Insider, but it's under the Rise 25 umbrella.
Gotcha. So you got 4 podcasts ongoing. How many interviews are you doing every week?
I typically do 6 to 10 a week. And on Inspired Insider, I release maybe 2 to 3 a week.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, man, that's a mind-boggling amount. If you haven't done a podcast, it sounds easy. Like when I first thought about doing a podcast, I was like, you just stand there and talk. But to host a podcast, you have to be both in the moment, paying attention to the outline that you prepared, and then also listening to the guest. And just sitting in front of a Zoom or Riverside, listening to somebody is a whole lot more work than it actually sounds, especially if you want to be halfway decent at it, which I'm still trying to get there.
Some people prepare. That's a question I get a lot of, like, okay, how much do I have to prepare? Right. And that's going to vary. I know some people that go in, I don't like to know anything. I just want to keep it flowing. Right. I am the opposite of that. I like to really, I think when I had you on, who knows? I mean, I listened to everything in 3 times speed, but I could have listened to like 10 hours of you talking, right? Which is equivalent to 3, but still, because I really wanted to go deeper, right? So I say at a minimum, people should at least look at someone's LinkedIn profile. I think there's a lot of stuff in there that's could be interesting, where their background is, and also obviously their about page. And I try and tell people at least watch one, if there's a video out there on them, listen in 2 times speed, and just you'll get some good nuggets on where the conversation could go.
I want to talk about the focus on kind of the genesis of this business, because from the chiropractic world to, we met through Mixergy. You were helping out Andrew Warner, who you reconnected me with, and it sounds like we're going to do something together. We haven't quite figured out what, but I appreciate the intro because we got the conversation started. But
I feel like you're working with like software SaaS, and you do a lot of work in the SaaS field. So I thought it was a perfect match.
Founders, it's a really good match. But you started off in chiropractic, you made your way into podcasting, you had your own podcast, but Rise 25, it feels recent to me. I know it's because I've known you for a long time, but it's what, 9 years, coming up on 10 years?
Yeah, exactly.
What was the moment where you're like, hey, I think I need to transition from using the podcast as a way of connecting to helping companies basically run this as a go-to-market channel? Like, where did the inspiration come from?
Yeah, you talk a lot about this actually in the SaaS world, which is just listening to customers, right? And listening to people. And that's really, I am not special because I just listen to what people were asking me, right? People were asking me, hey, I want to do this. And then I know it takes time and energy and money and resources to do it. So in order to do it, I have to be like, what's the path for ROI for your podcast? Because people would come, Colin, they say, hey, no, this is just a passion project. And I'm like, cool. If it's a passion project, you'll probably quit after 2 months or 6 months, or if you're glutton for punishment, a year or 2 years. But eventually what happens, from my experience, people are like, oh my God, this is taking a lot of time and energy. It's not producing anything for my business, and they quit. And so I was looking at ways to, guess in your world, like stop churn of people quitting. And the solution to that is making sure there's a path to ROI for someone. And so when we reverse engineered, okay, what are the paths to ROI? First of all, someone has to have a business, right? People were coming and maybe they were doing the podcast under their personal brand, which didn't have even though they had a successful business, they were not doing it under their business or even for the business. And so we're like, okay, you could still do it for your personal brand, but like there needs to be something linked to the business so that it's either creating partnerships or it's creating clients or something for that business, because you're going to look back and be like, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to quit. So we had to reverse engineer a path for someone to actually create ROI from their podcast.
And is this something that you had seen yourself, that you had worked out this model? Were clients coming to you through your podcast?
That's basically how it happened, right? Even before I even did it as a business, people were asking me and I didn't even offer it, right? And so I'm like, okay, this is happening and I'm not even trying.
Yeah.
Now, what if I actually was conscious of it and I actually tried? John Corcoran, my business partner, was doing this separately on his podcast, and he was a lawyer at the time. And he also would have someone on, and after they found out he's a lawyer, they start peppering him with questions after, and he's like, oh my God, literally I could just have people on and they'll spend anything. Like if they get free advice from a lawyer, they'll take it. I have someone on and they start asking me these questions. I'm like, okay, he'll answer them. But then listen, if you want to, he started getting work out of the people he was having on the show. Right. So it just, okay, so this is working without us trying. And now what if we just actually consciously thought about these things, like the types of people we have on, the messaging we say in the podcast to make people aware of what we do and those kind of things.
Do you remember your first customer on this? And like, did they pull it out of you? Did you have to pitch it to them?
It's a good question. Early on, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember who the first client was per se, but I do remember communicating with Andrew through Mixergy, right? And that's how that relationship started. Is I said, hey, and we were communicating for a while. I think he was living in Argentina at the time. And I said, hey, and there weren't many people doing interview podcasts at the time. I said, I'd love to have you on and feature you. And we were emailing back and forth. And the interview actually never happened. But he's like, Jeremy, I am looking for someone to help me with my show. And that was even before he came on the show. Okay. Amazing. This was in communication to ask him to be on the show. And so I do talk about this when we're talking about ROI with a podcast, because people are thinking about downloads and they're asking questions that are like, how do I get downloads? How do I get subscribers? How do I get viewership? And my answer is, it's about the relationships. Those things don't matter. And case in point with Andrew, which I never really thought about it like this, but this is before I did an interview with him. It was before, obviously, because I didn't do an interview, there's nothing live. So there's no downloads or subscribers or anything. So is not predicated, the ROI is not predicated on downloads and subscribers. When we're talking a B2B podcast, it's just the relationships when you're communicating. That could be via text or email or phone. So that happened just via email, trying to get them on the show.
And I think that kind of resonated with me because the podcast for me hasn't been it's not a revenue earner. We don't sell ads on the show. But when we survey our pipeline, I shouldn't say everybody, but I would say, I think the last time it was 80% of people that bought from us had listened to the show ahead of time. And that's one part of it. But the other part is, especially now that I'm remote, I've always been in Vancouver. I have no desire to leave Vancouver. I really like it here. But the access that a podcast has been able to give me to all of these folks, and I've been able to talk to some of the most interesting people in revenue, some of my favorite revenue leaders I've met through the show. I've had a chance to sit down and talk with them and interview them and pick their brain and learn from them. And one, the learning is tremendous, but two, just the ability to have had a conversation with them and then establish a relationship. So now when I go to Chicago, I know to hit up Jeremy. When I go to San Francisco, I have a group of folks to hit up. And when I reach out to founders, right, I have an audience that I enjoy their content. I get a chance to connect, and I get to meet people that I wouldn't have had a chance of bumping into in the streets here in Vancouver or in a co-working space or in an accelerator.
100%. I would say, Colin, by definition, I'm extroverted because I gain energy from being around people. But if you look at me in a group setting, I'm introverted in nature because I'm just sitting back. And the way if I'm going to a conference or something like that, what I like to do, because I'm better one-on-one, is I will look at some of the speakers or exhibitors and sponsors and have them on the show and form a relationship with them. So when I go there, I have those actual relationships and I don't feel like I have to be a wallflower and stay on the wall, but I know people. So I've gone into conferences where I didn't know anyone in the industry or really anyone. And I spent 6 months having people. So I remember Brian Kurtz, who's a friend, mentor, colleague. I don't know if Brian, he runs a Titans group, but a lot of direct response marketers, copywriters. And I was going to his Titans event. I had him on the show and, had some of the speakers and some of the people, I knew who were attending. And by the time I got there, I didn't know the speakers previous to having on the podcast, but it was interesting. There were several times where there was a line of people waiting to talk to the speaker. And the person saw me, beelined it around all the people waiting, came up, gave me a hug, and went back to the front of line, the receiving line of people asking questions. So it's just a powerful, like you said, relationship builder, but it helped me to realize, okay, what are my strengths and weaknesses, and focus in making those relationships before I even get there.
And aside from all the other ancillary benefits, and that's absolutely incredible. I literally wrote down pre-conference podcast play. I'm going to steal this from you. Listeners, if you haven't figured it out by now, I did actually want to have Jeremy on the podcast. I'm here to just suck all the information out of him because I'm going to steal all of his ideas. That's basically this podcast. I'm here to learn. Teach me all your dirty tricks so that I can use them myself.
When we're talking about content, people are like, what do I ask? What do I say? And what I tell people is be selfish, meaning just ask all the things that you care about or you're curious about. And then you're into the conversation, right? You can survey your whole audience and get questions, but what you care about is really, you could stick with that and just ask everything that you want to know.
We tried different approaches and it didn't really work for us very well. And I think you had told me this very early on, that if you're not curious about it, it's not going to work at all.
You're going to be bored. Yeah.
You're going to be super bored. And I had a period where I got super bored with the podcast, and you can hear it. The quality dropped, the listeners dropped, everything dropped. And I ended up taking a break for about a year because we do about an episode a week. We were coming up on 400 episodes. I think we'll hit that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Months. And yeah, I burnt out because I didn't care. And I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in the guests. I wasn't interested in the content, in the conversations. And it killed me. And so that 100% resonates, that if you don't care, if you're not selfish about it, it's not.
So I want you to be selfish. That's my point. Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. It's not the podcast for It's more a podcast for me than it is the listeners, and other folks that are like me that find the things that I find interesting will find the podcast and
They'll
attach
find
to
the
it.
episodes that they are interested in, and they'll geek out because you're curious and you're interested in asking those selfish questions. Totally.
So aside from all the ancillary benefits of you connect with people, you found business partners, you go to weddings, you get invited to cool pool parties, what's the ROI? Why should I do this as a business? Because ultimately, like you said, if there's no financial motive, if there's no ROI coming down the pipeline, this is going to be a passion project that's only going to last a short period of time. So talk to me about some numbers and why should people listen?
Yeah, I look at ways to give to people. There's a lot of different ways to give to people. So like, let's say, obviously, instead of opening up to, let's say you say to Andrew, obviously I made a direct introduction, reintroduction, but if you reach out, hey, I want to collaborate and do something together, that's could benefit both of you. But like, what's a give, right? It's one, it does take time, energy, money to feature him on the show, right? And so he's going to get a nice marketing asset out of it. It's going to be a nice post on predictablerevenue.com. It's probably maybe a social post later. And so there's a lot of different elements to the podcast that are a give. So when I look at it, like you were saying in the very beginning of this interview, the more people that think I shouldn't do this, and I'm not going to get I don't want another podcast out there. There's so many out there. I don't try and talk people out of it. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
If that's what you think, totally. So I don't try and convince them anything. I'm just like, okay. Because then you and I and the people that get it get to do it, right? And get to have our best relationships have our referral partnerships. It's a great way to collaborate. I find if I want to build connection and build a relationship, have them on, make introductions for them. What are other ways I give to people? So like in our pipeline, we use ActiveCampaign and we have columns. And all of them are, how do we give as much as humanly possible? So one column is like, have we had him on the podcast? Another column is, have we introduced Colin to anyone? Another one is, have we sent Colin a gift? Another one is, have we posted about Colin in social media? Another one is, we send a physical newsletter out. I may have a copy somewhere.
No way.
Oh yeah, here it is. And here it is. And we have an insert of our podcast episodes, right? And so have we featured Colin in an insert in our newsletter that goes out to 500-600 entrepreneurs, CEOs, right? And so all the columns are about how to give to someone.
Yeah.
And this forms relationships. And if, okay, you're serving SaaS founders, Andrew's serving SaaS founders, it doesn't take a rocket scientist. We could probably do stuff together. It's just more about how do we, one, collaborate, and two, just stay top of mind with people. So to answer your question, I don't try and convince them. That's cool. If you don't want to do it, more power to you. For me, it's been the most powerful thing I've done.
What percentage of your new customers would you say you've met through or you meet through your podcast?
Like for me, I tend to have a lot of partners on my podcast, right? And so those partners, so I look at it, if I put out 100 to 150 episodes a year, okay, let's say 75 of them are potential partners or partners in general. I think of it, okay, let's make it 80 just for an even number. Let's say 10% of those people each refer us one. So 8 people refer us one person this year. For a B2B, for a high client lifetime value, we don't need huge numbers to make it make sense. Okay.
That's one.
And now year 2, I have another 8. Year 3, I have another 8. Year 4, I have another 8. Year 5, I have another 8. So we get a lot of introductions and referrals, but it's a lot of times we say, oh, our best clients come from referrals, but I can't really make it predictable. I can't really refine, but with a podcast, you can no one can force someone to do it, but you can make it more predictable by giving to those people, giving those relationships, and having more partners on.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I was listening to, I think I've listened to this episode a number of times. It was Tim Ferriss and James Clear, and they were talking about marketing James's book, Atomic Habits. And he talked about one, owning your own channel. And so he was talking about driving folks to listen to the podcast, driving folks to the newsletter. But they talked about own channels and borrow channels, and social, especially a partner's social borrowed channel. Borrow other people's authority and borrow other people's attention was a really fantastic way that helped him grow that list.
Yeah. I think one mistake I see people making in this arena is today I went to someone's podcast, the page on their website, and it has a link to, it doesn't have, like on yours and on mine, each episode has a post, which is great for a bunch of reasons. Obviously from an SEO perspective, obviously from the guest giving to the person, they can share it, makes it very easily shareable. This person had a Spotify icon and an Apple icon. There were no episodes on their website. And like you're saying, you should own the real estate. So I clicked and it went to Spotify, and now I'm off on Spotify. Or I click and go to Apple and they have nothing on their website. And so they're not having all the benefits they could from the podcast.
This is something we screwed up early because our marketing team said, oh, podcast is getting the word out. And then we'll put a call to action in there, which is like buy predictable revenue. Not literally, but I think it directed to our get started form. And you can imagine it didn't do very well. What is the best practice? What do you recommend? Is linking right to the show notes with a transcript? Is it to a blog post about that summarizes the episode? Is it subscribe to the newsletter and you'll get the transcript sent to you?
From like a call to action perspective?
Yeah. What should be in those show notes for that next step? If it's not, follow us on.
Yeah, I think one, there should be just something clear in the very beginning of a show on what the company does. Okay, first of all, because if you listen to our interview and you heard it because I read it on what the heck we do, right? There's a lot of ones when I'm doing research for someone and I listen to all these podcasts, I don't know what the host does. I don't know what the company does at all. Okay, and mentioning it in the first part, it could be very short, very short. And I find, here's the other thing, Colin, some people, and they'll fight me on this sometimes, and they'll say, oh, I'm going to read the same thing over and over. Let's just clip it in the beginning. Okay. And I'd be like, sure, do that if you don't want ROI from your podcast, right? Because I'm on your show, right? I'm going to share the episode. Will I go back and re-listen to the episode? So I may never hear your sponsorship message. And arguably, I'm not going to say but your guest arguably is maybe the most important piece of this whole entire thing. And that most important piece will never hear what you do. Do you know what I mean?
You broke my brain in half because one, we definitely had a pre-roll ad that Sarah recorded years ago. I believe still playing at the beginning of this episode. So Ugo, if you're listening, I just wrote a note for us to change that.
I'm not even saying you have to change it, but at least read something live, right? You could keep whatever is there too, but read something live at a minimum.
Too many ads. We've played with it a number of times, and I went through a period where I think didn't have enough bandwidth. And so we tried to optimize for, let's just get it done as efficiently as possible, as opposed to as high quality as possible. And the quality approach only takes another 2 minutes for me to read the ad read. I can read an ad read.
Yeah. And also I like to incorporate the guest into my read. If I'm saying, listen, if you don't have a podcast, you should. Listen, Colin has a podcast. You should check it out. I was listening to it today. I'll incorporate you into my sponsorship. What gives it even more credibility, look at this important person I have on that's cool and really smart. Check their podcast out. They have a podcast. And so it's not just I'm reading the same thing every time, but it's adjusted a bit according to the person. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Oh, and it comes across as way more organic. It comes across as, you're always going to be, anytime you're reading something, you're going to be constantly rethinking it and updating it. And I think when was the last time I rethought the ad that Sarah reads or read? Because I'm pretty sure she recorded that 2 years ago.
It does. It helps me. It's helped me personally in different settings succinctly say what we do, because I read it 10 times a week and I have to verbalize it. And like you said, I tweak it and change it, make it shorter, make it more concise. So I totally agree with you.
100%. Yeah. That was one of those moments where I felt like I got shot. I was like, yep, we're doing that wrong. Brain went totally blank for a minute.
At least you have a message. I know
yeah.
shows that don't have anything at all.
So if people are listening, they're probably sold on, yes, we got to do this. What are the mechanics of how? And yes, one is just call Jeremy and do it, because it is a lot of work and it does take a bit to get the systems up. You can do it, but you need somebody to turn the crank, and it's going to be somebody you train, or it's going to be Jeremy. So we get that. How, if you're going to do it in-house with a piece of paper and a couple of tools, how do they do it?
It's a common question I get, which is, I like to keep it as simple as humanly possible. Okay. So really, I tell people you can use Zoom and a USB mic. That's literally all you need. Okay. This I've had for, who knows, 10 years. Like it's
Yeti Blue.
It's $100 and something. I don't even know. And I use Zoom. I know you're using Riverside. I don't even care what people use. If they use Microsoft Teams, have people use Microsoft Teams. If they use Google, I don't care. It's very easy from a technology setup, right? Because anyone could publish something on YouTube or whatever it is. It's really the strategy piece that I worry about for people, because like they will do it and then not get the ROI or, you know, what they want out of it. But from a technology perspective, I remember I was on with someone a couple weeks ago and they're like, do I need like a soundboard or something? I'm like, honestly, I have no idea. I use a USB mic and Zoom. They were very technical. I'm like more about this stuff equipment wise than I do. I just like to keep it easy. I don't know what mic you use, but like it's
Sure, SM7B.
Okay.
Focusrite Scarlett.
Oh yeah,
Cloud.
I've heard good. I've heard good things
Lifter.
about that.
Yeah.
Like anything that works, that because you want just good sound, so you want a USB mic, but any platform will work. So the setup could be super simple.
Very simple.
Yeah.
How do we get the process going? Like if I want, say somebody's listening and they want to get started. So you got Zoom. Everybody probably has Zoom or Riverside. The only reason I use Riverside is I've had some issues where a guest had bad internet and Riverside records locally and then uploads to the cloud. So it's a bit more of a pain in the butt because it's not Zoom, so it's non-standard. But the advantage there is fewer chances you're going to have to re-record if there's a bad connection or if there's a blip somewhere inconvenient.
Yep.
So you've got somewhere to record. What else do I need?
You just honestly, if we keep it super simple, you just need a platform to publish it, right? You could publish it on YouTube if you want. Obviously, when we're doing it, we'll submit it to all the podcast channels and everywhere it needs to go. But if someone wants to just upload it to somewhere, you could upload it on LinkedIn. It doesn't even matter, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you're uploading it. Now, like I was saying, ideally you want it on your website, right? You could put it in a place and then embed it in your website, however it is. That's easy to do in like a YouTube or something like that.
Mm-hmm. What do you do for yours? Like you record them on Zoom, then you have something. Do you use Libsyn to distribute them?
Yeah, we have an enterprise level account, and there's so many audio hosts out there. You know what I mean? I mean, I've used a version of Libsyn before we had the enterprise for, who knows, over a decade.
So it's Libsyn Enterprise, or is Enterprise a separate thing? I'm not familiar.
Yeah, it's like an enterprise version where we pay separately and we have different features, et cetera, because we run so many shows. So it allows us to more easily launch shows and manage shows for our clients. And obviously we have more features and we have buying power, because if someone were to buy an enterprise level on it, I think it's not even worth it. But if you don't have like lots of shows, you know, that you're running on it. But yeah, any distribution channel like that, again, we're agnostic. We like it, but it's not like you need to use that. It's just anything that's going to get it out there, because it's about the relationship and you'll distribute it and you want to make sure you have a post on your website, etc.
So you record, you throw it into Libsyn. And for those that aren't familiar, Libsyn is basically you upload a file and then you link it to your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify, your all the places where you want it distributed. And then every time you create a new episode, Libsyn handles the distribution for you.
It's a distribution platform. Exactly.
There we go. And so once it's up in Libsyn, it's on all the places. Now what? Do you have it like automatically create a blog post on your website?
No, we have a team of writers and editors who will create the blog post, and then we have a development team that will go in and post it on. Like when I created what I wanted, Colin, which I wanted to show up, have the interview, and not do anything else. So basically, I will just go in our dashboard, drag the file in there, and what happens is obviously it gets distributed. The audio video team will create it, but then we have a separate team that will create the full post and the transcript and everything, and then post it on the website for the individual blog. And then obviously, really the magic happens with the going back to the relationship, right? Which is you want it posted somewhere, but then we'll message the guest with a nice, you'll get it. Hey, your episode's live. Give them a little blurb they can easily copy and paste. We'll then create later on, probably like a month later, we'll create a snippet and we'll post it across all of our social media channels so people can look at it, share it, like it, and then it's a very easy shareable asset that the guests can share across their social channels, because ultimately it's all about them. Nothing I post, if you go to my LinkedIn, is about me, really. It's really about the guest. Right. And those shareable things, obviously we link to the full episode in the post so people can check out the full episode as well. But in the post itself, there's nothing about me, nothing about what we do. It's all featuring the guest. Right. And so it's just making it more and easy for the guest to share it. And that's really the goal of it.
Once you've had a guest on, and so say you had somebody on, their show goes live today. You reshare it once, twice? Do you have a system, a pattern? Like, do you have things that you recycle? Or is it like you share it this week and then never again?
Yeah, I mean, we start off with the episode and then probably every guest is a little bit different, but like it could be a month and it could be 6 months and then a year. That all different clips of the person with the full link back to the full interview. Also, depending on the person, I may mention them on a bunch of podcast episodes, right? Like if I have a SaaS founder, let's say, it's about introductions, right? I have a SaaS, it's happened the other day. I had someone in private equity in healthcare. Okay. There was 3 people. I'm like, they would be perfect introductions for each other. Okay. So I searched my past interviews, and I mentioned those guests, gave them a shout out on the episode. They're going to get a backlink on my post. The episode will be featured, and I'm going to introduce the people to each other. And I already did. Actually, I already messaged them. I say, hey, by the way, I think you should meet this guest. By the way, you're going to get some cool SEO juice because I did mention your website on the episode, but you guys should talk. And all 3 responded and they're all busy entrepreneurs, right? They all 3 responded within a half a day and said, sounds great. So I was able to make 3 great introductions to my guest that they're going to collaborate with previous guests. So it's almost a follow-up system for me to remind me of who should I introduce from my network to this person.
I think the biggest thing I'm learning, and I've been doing this for a while, is what's clearly working really well for you is your focus on how do I add value for the guest. I think I optimized in the early days for how do I make this the best show possible for the audience, which when you're starting a podcast seems like the thing that makes sense. But what I'm realizing today is it's not about the audience, even though if you're listening, thank you. I love you.
We don't care about you. Yeah.
But
No.
you need to maybe need to do a better job of optimizing for the experience of the guest on the show, because they're, especially if you're using this for a demand gen perspective, which I've only, like, to be honest, I've only tried a couple of episodes, and it hasn't been a pure demand gen play. I'm not hard selling these folks, but I think that's one thing I haven't done a good job of for the audience or for the guests that have been on the show is, how do I optimize? How do I really put more, make it worth more for them as a,
Yeah. Yes. And from the audience perspective, like, I feel like that's kind of table stakes, because when I have an awesome guest on, the content, I'm not going to say takes care of itself, but it's going to be good content, right? You've been doing this predictable revenue thing for many years, so I don't have to worry that you're not going to bring value in the content. Okay. Especially if I'm asking things I'm curious about.
yeah,
That's why it's not like I don't think it's important. I just think it somehow takes care of itself. Like if I have Gino Wickman on from Traction, right? Do I really have to worry? He wrote a book, everyone follow. Like, do I have to worry about the content being good? Like, he's gonna get on and deliver some amazing content, right? With me asking him questions. So the quality of the guest is the quality of the content is gonna come from that.
I love that. So we've talked about why. We talked about who to target is effectively people you want to be partners, referral partners, potential customers, basically anybody you want to connect with.
Yeah. And the other thing with it, Colin, is that also feeds the right content. So like, let's say someone's in deals in the manufacturing world, and they're having all their partners and clients and people in manufacturing world, the content is all going to be relevant to that particular niche, right? So it's going to take care of itself.
Yeah. I'm got a little startup side project that I've been working on, and I've been doing customer development interviews. And now I've recently just this week pivoted off of, the conversation we had to maybe I should be interviewing these folks as well. Because my co-founder literally asked me, maybe we should find somebody who's in the space. We could create blog posts and do like the big pieces of content. And I went, no, of course I could do that. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I do that with the podcast. I've been doing that for the last 8 years with the podcast. I know how to do that. And so as a new founder in a new space, it's creating an opportunity for me to learn about this new market that I'm opening up. And it will not only create connections, it'll create good content, it'll create awareness, it'll create partners, it'll create folks that can help me learn and get introduced to everybody else in the industry.
Yeah, and even when I come on, here's how I think about it. I was on one of my friends, Jason Smith, on his podcast, and he talks about social ads, kind of the truth about social ads and social media marketing, and he helps like supplement brands and e-commerce. And I said to him, Jason, who's on your dream list to have on the podcast? I'm going to get you one of those people in the next month. And so the same goes for you. And he's like, oh, Jeremy, come on. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about it. And who are the people? And it could be whoever. I'm curious for you, who's like a dream guest, or like some dream guests that you'd want to have on in the industry?
My first thought goes to like the big famous entrepreneurs, founders.
Yeah.
But the more interesting conversations I've had have been the ones I've been having the last couple of weeks based on your advice and your feedback, which was, I really enjoy talking to founders that are in that kind of, they've just found product market fit. They need a hand scaling it up. Like I genuinely, when you think about your day and you think about, do I like this job? Do I not like this job? I always think, I think there was a exercise that said like, does this give you energy or does this take energy away from you? It might've even been part of EOS, part of Traction, Gino Wickman's book. I think it was part of it. I've seen it other places, but I believe it was part there as well. And like talking to founders that are in that stage, that gives me energy because 1, they're super interesting. 2, I get to learn. And 3, I know I can help them. And it doesn't have to be, I can help them by them giving me some money. It can be, I can help them by pointing them in the direction of a resource or sharing a blog post I wrote or giving them one of my internal docs of like, hey, if you haven't hired before, here's how I hire salespeople. And like, here's a free doc. And like to be able to share a Google Doc with somebody and know that you made their life easier is just an extremely rewarding experience.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, are there any groups? Who are the groups for SaaS founders that are perfect? You're perfect for them and they're perfect for you.
And Andrew Warner is certainly up there. He's definitely one of them. Yeah, I think there's Ryan Alice runs a similar community. There's a few other folks that I haven't gone and vetted the content, but I think other folks that are running entrepreneur communities, I think just like anybody with a really good story. I'd love to get, I read Scott Belsky's book, The Messy Middle, fantastic book on startup life. He founded Behance and then it got bought by Adobe and he stayed at Adobe and continued building amazing things there. And not only was it a really well-written book, but his story is incredible as well.
Yeah, what comes to mind for me is, and you probably know him, Rob Walling. You know, Rob with MicroConf.
Yeah.
He's actually coming out with, by the time we air this, it may already be out, but exit strategy. So I don't know if you've had him on the show, but he'd be a great guest. And his book is coming out too.
It's funny. I think he or MicroConf, he's got like an accelerator and he invested in my buddy's company through that.
Oh yeah. And exactly. Tiny Seed.
Yeah, Tiny Seed. And it's funny. That's my buddy Kareem. And my buddy Kareem is the same one who knows Andrew Warner. And he's the one who introduced me to Andrew. And that's how I met you.
Love it. Yeah. So
just going in a loop here.
Yeah. Anyways, I just love hearing
amazing.
People's resources, sharing resources and sharing connections.
So we've got to the point where I feel like, so I will say this. If you're listening, you absolutely can do this yourself. If you're a founder, it's 100% doable. If you're trying to scrape together every last dollar and you're like, I can't afford to hire somebody else to do this, 100% doable. I did it myself. I found somebody to edit the videos for pretty cheap. I'm sure it's even cheaper now with all the AI editing stuff. The thing that helped me was I had a marketing team in place. I built the process. I trained somebody to do it. Who was it? I think it was Julia. I trained Julia. I said, Julia, you're going to automate all this for me. I wrote a process doc, trained Julia on the process doc. That took a while of like learning, but I had to set up Libsyn. I had to figure out Zoom. I had to figure out the recording. I had to figure out the flows. This is my ad read for Rise 25. If you have some money and you don't want to do all of that hassle, because it is a hassle, and I do run a podcast. I think I'm recording 4 or 5 episodes next week. For me to have to go and do all of that in like post-production stuff is a nightmare. Not a nightmare. It's easily doable, small, like low complexity tasks. And having somebody that just takes care of it for you so that you can stay in the flow of doing the CEO thing, doing your founder thing is one of the greatest gifts. So if you need that, talk to Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, at Rise 25, we help people launch and run podcasts. And if someone's listening, so I never want to start a podcast, that's totally cool. Just think of ways how you can give to your relationships. You know what I mean? I love giving through a podcast. I find it a great relationship builder, but you don't have to even do a podcast, right? You could text someone and build a relationship. You can post about them on social. So that's my medium of choice, and I love it. And I think any B2B business should do it, but you don't have to, but thank you. Yeah.
If people want to, if I haven't said enough, if people want to find more about Rise 25 or they want to reach out to you, pick your brain on podcasting, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can rise25.com. We have a video on there. If you go to inspiredinsider.com and you search podcast in the search bar, we've done a lot of free episodes on almost all of the questions we've gotten. Like, how do I name my podcast? How do I do podcasts on LinkedIn? Like every possible question, iteration, because it's about sharing knowledge and adding value. And so you can check out a lot of free resources and content that we give away.
I love it. If you listen to every episode of the podcast, you probably wouldn't need to hire me as a founder sales coach, but people don't have time to do that. And they probably don't have time to check out all those things. And so if you want to shortcut it, reach out to Jeremy.
They want the shortcut. Exactly.
I've worked with Jeremy. I'll put my name beside it. He's fantastic. He was extremely helpful in us getting this show going. And if you're interested, highly recommend Rise 25. Jeremy, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to everybody for listening. We'll catch y'all next week.